and leisure panel, and we've got a wonderful lineup, some incredible speakers to help us tackle the subject of ageing in the travel and tourism industry. And us Q3ers are proud, and we've got some Q4ers as well, and you Q2 lot, carry on working, carry on working. It really isn't often spoken about, yet all the stats are, as we know, we've heard it all from Aviva this morning. So we've really got still a long road of enjoyment, and I'm enjoying it more than ever as I'm now in Q3. So, you know, and the disposable income amongst women within the Q3 range is significant. And I'm delighted to introduce the moderator. She's a great friend. I had the joy of being on one of her panels at the Silver Marketing Summit on Tuesday, which was another great day. She's an authority in the industry with over 35 years in travel in the silver sector. She's managing director at Silver Marketing Association. She is Debbie Marshall, and through her organisation, it's really focused on bringing together businesses and individuals with a shared interest in ethical marketing to the silver demographic. And she, as I said, she hosted a very successful summit this week. So welcome, Debbie, to the stage.
Just bring my cup of tea with me. You know, I'm of the age where a cup of tea at this time of day is very important. So we are indeed the final shift. In fact, it's quite often referred to as the graveyard shift, which I thought was very apt as we're talking about getting older. So I read the introduction, which Alessandra wrote about celebrating midlife, and she said that ageing in the industry is the elephant in the room. But ageing and indeed dying, as we learnt this morning, are the only certainties of life. Nothing else is certain, so it's an elephant we really can't afford to ignore. And I think it's one we should be speaking about more openly and without prejudice. I read quite recently that ageism is at the same stage as gender bias and indeed racism was about 25, 30 years ago, and that's where we are today with ageism, so we have a long way to go. So, as we know, we could be living, as Aviva said, till at least 100. In fact, in the lunch hour, I did the little death test. Ooh, a bit spooky. And my time, actually, I'm going to not actually live quite as long as Aviva. That was concerning. But anyway, I think it's 103 I'm going to make it. So I've got a good, you know, more than 40 years still to go on this earth. And babies born today, of course, have a 50% chance of reaching 100. But, and I just want to throw a note of caution here, Aviva was relentlessly upbeat and everything's going to be positive and sunny. But we never know when our maker would come. And I would just cite the example here of the lovely Michael Mosley, who dedicated his life and his career to telling us about how to age well and healthily. He got up one morning, he went for a walk, end of. So I'm just saying, you know, you never quite know what curveball life is going to throw at you. Having the good fortune to age should be a blessing and not a curse. And those of us who are lucky enough to age healthily should be able to look forward to many years of life, of travel, and of work, should we choose, whether it's from choice or circumstance. And yet, just to throw a slightly downbeat note, why is there so much negativity when it comes to ageing, and particularly for women ageing? The menopause, do not get me started on the menopause. So much about it, and I could do the whole session just on that. But also, why is there so much negativity about that relentless business of trying to hold back the years? We're told that aging is a bad thing. We need to buy creams that are age-defying, resisting age. Throw it back. Just don't age. Whatever you do age, whether it's your skin, whether it's your hair colour, whatever it is, all those folds of fat hanging down to your knees, you must not age. And I think that's a shame that women are sort of, you know, practically forced to think about spending money on stuff like fillers and Botox and stretching and sucking and nipping and tucking. And why? Why is it that we have to be forced or encouraged to do all this just to have that moment when someone says, oh, how old's she? No, really? She looks good for her age. Depressing, isn't it? And when it comes to the workplace, well, if it is hard to go back to work or find a promotion after having a baby, believe me, when you get to your 50s or, God forbid, your 60s, it is very hard to get a job or to get promoted. And again, Aviva painted a great picture of our Q3 and about reinventing ourselves in new careers. And I'm not knocking any of that, but I'm just saying the reality can be tough if you're looking for that. And I'm very quickly, I have a couple of examples of one of my lovely friends who is 63. She's still having to work full time. She has to have her hair dyed, her roots, every 3 weeks because she doesn't want to say how old she is. She has hearing aids and she has her hair cut over her ears to hide them. So sad. Somebody else I know in her late 50s trying to get back into the workplace, and the recruitment agent had to manipulate her CV in order to get her an interview, taking out key dates of when she went to university, manipulating stuff around so that she would appear younger than she was just to get an interview. It's not so easy. And for this conference, I've had my nails done, and I went to a manicure place not far from Harley Street, and this kind of monster walked in when I was halfway through. She looked like she'd been in a war zone, and she sat next to me. She's having her nails down. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yes." She said, "I've had a facelift." I said, "Goodness." All right, good. Was that what you wanted? And she said, "Well," she said, "actually," she said, "I'm 61 and I live in Dubai and this is my annual leave and I've had to have this facelift because I want to keep my job in the airline industry. That's what you have to do." Oh my God, sad. And yet, the pension age has gone up to 67, it's going up to 68, it'll be 70, and it's a very young audience today, and I don't want to depress you guys, but you know, you're going to be at least 75 before the state gives you a bean, so, you know, a long working life ahead. So, I'm just saying, you know, keep grafting. I'm just trying to throw a little bit of reality. So start saving, start paying back those student loans. In our Agents of Change session to end the day, we'll be looking at the intersection of age and travel and women in two ways. Firstly, kind of lifestyle and travel. Now, we heard earlier that, get this right, 85% of all travel decisions are made by women, and the over 50s control 60% of the travel market. So even by my limited maths, there's a lot of crossover there. Are older women understood? Are they being ignored? Is the silver female pound a missed opportunity? And then over in the workforce, what does this look like currently and how are we planning for the future? Is ageism rife in the workforce? Are older women really getting a fair deal? Now, these questions are not for me to answer, thank goodness. I have a stellar panel with me today and I'd like to invite them all to join me. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take the order in which I've kind of scripted this, but sit wherever you like. First up is Carolyn Ray. And Carolyn is the rock chick at the end, looking absolutely fabulous in the earrings, the diamante on the back of your... You're like a kind of Chrissy Hine come Debbie Harry, just amazing, beautiful. Now, Carolyn is CEO of a wonderful organisation called Journeywoman, which I've been researching like crazy. It's the world's first and largest women's solo travel publication, and she has got a community of, get this, over 100,000 women. So you really know what you're talking about. But introduce yourself and tell us how you found yourself here today.
Hi, everyone. So I'm from Canada. I know there's some Canadians in the house. Yeah. So I have been the CEO and editor of Journeywoman for 5 years this week, actually. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary last week in Toronto. And the company was founded by a woman named Evelyn Hannon, who was acknowledged as kind of the first solo travel writer in the world. She started writing about solo travel in 1994. At a time when men were still controlling the editorial, where there weren't a lot of women travel writers. And she built this incredible community of women. And in 2018, I turned 50. And I had just gone to Kenya. And I came back from Kenya. And I was the CEO of a consulting firm. And I quit. I quit my job. I got rid of everything in my house. I sold. I auctioned off the whole house because I realized my life was going in the wrong direction. I did not want to be the consumer chick buying everything all the time. I wanted to live a more purposeful life. And so within 6 weeks, I got rid of everything I owned, and I set out to travel around the world. Then I was invited to take over Journeywoman, so it happened about 6 months after that. And it was a real honor because Evelyn, who I know her family, her daughter is a very good friend of mine. She was quite iconic, and you could really feel it last week at our event at the Dattani Museum of Toronto, because I donated her boots to the museum as a symbol of women's empowerment, and hundreds of women came out to celebrate her. It was quite a day. So anyways, I'll skip to the end of this, but I had no idea what I was doing 5 years ago. I did not realize I was actually investing in a movement, and the last 5 years have just been the wildest ride, the best ride. I thought when I left my corporate job that I had all my yayas out. No, there's still work to be done. And I'm very, very happy to be here, and I want to thank Alessandra for giving us this platform, because I think it's absolutely fundamental to be talking about women over 50, and what a great setup.
Fantastic.
Even menopause, I'm up for it.
Well, I mean, Carolyn, you are your brand, aren't you? You are Journey Woman.
Well, I try to be.
Yeah. I mean, what's amazing, amazing. So moving on, Meera next. Now, you don't have to have, 20/20 vision to see that Meera is a trifle younger than the rest of us here. And are you, well, I guess you're probably a Gen X, or are you?
I am.
Yeah, a Gen X.
Hi, so my
Oh, you are too. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I'm at the tail end of Gen X.
Practically a
So-
millennial.
No,
Yeah,
about
okay.
5 years short of the official millennial starter age.
Well, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you came to be
sure.
here today? So actually, it's a very interesting reason you're here today.
Yes, well, so I'm not 50, but I'm not far off, and the senior in my title is like nothing to do with that, by the way. So I'm a freelance travel journalist. I'm a senior editor at adventure.com. And yeah, the reason I'm here today, thank you, Alessandra, is my partner turned 50 last year, and I started to pick up on a lot of the travel marketing language that was being used for over 50s travel, which I think I had clocked before, but maybe not to the same degree. And then that's when I pitched an article to the iPaper, and thankfully Sophie Lamb took it. And I kind of went off on a nice rant, which was really fun, and it was great to get everybody's feedback on it and just how much it resonated. And I'm not the first to tap into this. Obviously, I've read lots of other things, and I think I'm going to get the I watched a webinar actually that was all about this with research from Anything But Grey. I think that's what they're called. So it's clearly a thing, this new demographic that's coming through, this upper end of Gen X that are about to, have turned or about to turn 50 in the next 5 years. Millennials, the first millennials are going to turn 50 in 2030. So this is not that far off, basically. So that is why I'm...
And it was language, wasn't it, that you talked about in the article that you said really sort of put you off?
About language.
What's wrong with old fogies then? Do you not relate?
I love them. I will be one. I think there's nothing wrong in these terms in themselves, but when I read things like senior, it was senior, mature, golden gap year, retirees, it didn't speak to me, and it doesn't speak to, certainly, I can only come at this from my friends, my peers, other Asian travelers, in my family. So I can only speak for them, and we're all big travelers. So this is your market. This is the market that is traveling. And, I did a straw poll with a lot of my friends, and the general gist, basically the words barge pole, wooden and touch came up a lot when presented with some of the holiday offerings. So I think, language is, it does make you, it does have bearing. That's why we all work in comms, and marketing is such a big thing, and advertising is such a big thing. But I know we'll come to that later. So.
Absolutely, language and, of course, imagery, which we'll also come to later. Well, I'm going to turn now to Alice Morrison, who some of you may recognise from the BBC. Alice is, well, goodness, she calls herself the female Indiana Jones. She is a presenter, an explorer, an adventurer. She lives my dream life in Morocco, having the best time. And she's got a brand new series called Arabian Adventures, The Secrets of the, I hope I pronounce this right, Nabateans?
Well done.
Thank you.
10 out of 10.
So, an exciting life, exciting job. How did it come to that you managed to actually make your living out of being a travel presenter? Not that we're jealous.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Alessandra, for this opportunity. So, yeah, I'm a full-time adventurer, and I wasn't always. I had a proper job. I was actually the CEO of Aquango, no less, in media development, and I'd started off in journalism. And then when I was 48, all sorts of things happened. I had to dissolve my company, and so I was really pissed off. I was really, really pissed off, and I'm Scottish. And if any of you know any Scots, that means, like, seriously. And it was a government thing. The Tories came in. Sorry, but the Tories came in.
They're about to go.
They dissolved my company, and I was outraged. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll cycle across Africa. I'll enter the longest bike race on earth. So my training was sitting on my turbo bike on the snowiest winter we'd ever had. I'd signed up in November, and we set off in January. I sat on my turbo bike watching Strictly Come Dancing, eating chocolate and thinking, this will do. Oh my God, seriously. When I started that adventure, it was a nightmare. If anyone would like to know about saddle sores in quite a lot of detail, your woman.
She's the girl for it.
Yeah. So basically, I started on a life of real adventure, true adventure, and I managed to write books, get TV programs, get sponsors. I was talking to, where is she, Elise, about this, and work with people like Intrepid and try to make that into a life, because I love travel. I'm absolutely curious about people. And I think what I'd like to say at the outset, I'd like to plant my flag. I've been traveling my whole life because my parents moved abroad when I was 6 weeks old to Africa. So I was brought up in Africa my whole life. And this period of my life is the best for travel. It is brilliant to be an older woman swanning around the world. You get treated fantastically.
Wow. Go you. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. That's very inspirational for all of us in our future travel plans. And finally, we're moving to the workplace, away from the world of fabulous adventure. Nicky Lyle is Group HR Director at Hotelplan. There are 450 full-time employees at Hotelplan and another 450 or thereabouts seasonal. So it's a big old workforce that she leads. Now, girl power, you were the first ever female board director of Hotelplan. Very impressive. How did it happen?
In my 50s.
In your 50s,
Yeah.
even better.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's been inspiring. It's the first time I've been to this, and I've brought quite a few of my peer group. And yeah, we're having the best day, just to say. We'll be back next year. So kind of what got me here today? Well, I love traveling. I guess that's why we're all here, right? And I spent quite a large part of my 20s traveling, and that's where I discovered my real passion for people. And that's what took me into HR, which was just my experience of cultures, just, working, traveling abroad quite a lot. And that really opened up my eyes to actually where I wanted to make an impact, I suppose, in the workplace. And that was through HR. So I came back to the UK after traveling, and I started to work in retail. And that was great. And I stayed in retail, actually travel retail, for a really long time. Because I loved that space. I don't know why I didn't come into travel sooner. That was always a bit of a regret for me. But when I was in retail and just a bit of practical kind of like career advice, I'd spent quite a bit of time in HR, and then I had a brilliant female ally who said to me, do you know what, if you really want to get the people experience, then come out of HR for a while and go and work for the MD and go into his team and just really start to get into the customer experience. So I came out of HR for a while, went in and did some customer strategy work and did lots of fun stuff in the airports, putting in concierge teams and flagship stores, and that was all really, really good fun, and I took that as far as I could. And whilst I got a lot out of that because I was traveling a lot within the job, I wasn't really my authentic self, so I don't think my career took me to the place that I probably wanted to get to, because I didn't come out to my 40s. So I suppose for me that was a really impactful thing for me. And so I think when I started to take those barriers away from myself, I guess on a more serious note, and I started to challenge barriers in the workplace, and then I was given a great opportunity to come across to Hotelplan, and there I've just worked with two brilliant CEOs, and I worked with a brilliant group of board directors. Those barriers kind of fell away, and those two male allies at the CEO level told me that I could do something different and I could achieve my own potential. And I realised that a lot of my own imposter syndrome came from the fact that I couldn't be myself. And then I was introduced to Jo, and I was like, actually, she kicks ass, and I want to be a bit more like her, which, come on, it's true, yeah? So then I kind of went through my own journey, and then and I'm sitting here today. Yeah, it's the first female gay HR director at Hotel.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, female, gay, and over 50. I mean, you know, all boxes. Fantastic. And I'd just like to stay with you for a moment because we want to talk a little bit about the workplace. And I know at Hotelplan you're really proud of some of the processes that you've put in place to kind of protect, retain, and encourage women in their 50s within your organisation. Can you just briefly touch on some of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, just a bigger context here is that, you know, since 2020, 500,000 people over the age of 50 have left the UK workforce. It's huge, guys. It really, really is, gals. It's huge. And, you know, along with the fact that, you know, since Brexit, we're really struggling now for a skills shortage, you know, you've just got this perfect storm where people are choosing to exit the market. We're struggling to actually attract skills into the market. And guess what? We're still really biased to the group that wants to leave, do something different. Okay, so we've just got to take that on board, everybody here today. There are serious messages here too. So there's that's happening. And then I think from our own perspective as a business, you know, like most of you here today, 69% of the employees in our teams are women. Within our senior leadership team, in the over 50 group, a third in senior positions are women. And, you know, a third, well, I think it's actually 1 in 4 in our workforce identify with a disability. You know, so there's lots of stuff happening that you've got to take seriously when you're thinking about your people strategy. And we fundamentally, within our business, think the three have to align together. And I know it sounds a bit corny and everyone's saying it, but we do fundamentally align our people on a sustainability strategy with what we're trying to achieve from a profit perspective, and that's so important. So, you know, so when you're thinking about sort of some practical applications, you're thinking about what do you want to do, who do you want to be as a business, right? Well, this brilliant conversation earlier where we were talking about all the commercial reasons to drive D&I through your business. It's just right. Yeah, a lot of this is just because it's the right thing to do. So, you know, we give a lot of thought to what the right thing to do is, as well as obviously, you know, thinking about what our overall, our own plans are to 2030. So some of the things, you know, just from a recruitment perspective, you've all talked about it. You've got to make sure everything's anonymised on a CV. You know, you want to make sure that when you're bringing people into the business, that you're making it really easy for that process, that you're talking to people in a very kind of neutral language is really, really important. And that, you know, from a recruitment perspective, where you're able to anonymise those CVs and then bring people in, you've got to offer flexibility. So one of the key messages today is advertise all your roles at 50% or 80% or whatever you can do. You know, you've got to give people, you know, in our age group who are looking for flexibility, who are choosing to leave because we don't have that flexibility, give us a reason to apply to work in your brands. So advertising everything on a part-time basis is really, really important. And then when people are in the business, a glass of water, the hardest thing about becoming, I suppose, you know, a director at Hotelplan in my 50s is you've got your yah-yah moment, right? And then you sit you know, you go to your board meetings and you sit in there and all of a sudden one day you wake up and you think, I can't remember anything. I can't remember my data. And actually, I don't like any of you. Oh, come on, it's true, right? And those of you that are younger than me, it's coming. And I do like the people I work with. But it does give you an opportunity, because I think the biggest thing I would say when you're thinking about what you want to do from a people perspective is nobody tells you this stuff. Right, so there's a lot of people here today that are in their 30s and their 40s. Nobody tells you what's coming. They don't tell you what's going to be like to have kids. They don't tell you what it's going to be like, you know, when you come back to work after kids. They certainly do not tell you what it's like to go through the menopause when you've also got a great job that you've just been promoted into. Okay, because then that imposter syndrome starts to creep back in. So you have to take some of the worries away. And I suppose one of the, you know, it feels quite serious, but you've got to create stability and safety, because when you think about what our travellers want, when you think about, you know, the majority of, you know, female bookers who want solo experiences within our products, people want that within the workplace as well. So it's absolutely fundamental that you create those safe spaces. So take away things that are going to be a problem, because all of a sudden, you know, your parents start to get old. Your own body's changing, but your parents are starting to get older as well. So make sure that things like caring isn't an issue. Okay, sort out the menopause. It's just a basic. Just do it. Okay, so we spent a lot of time introducing a really, really solid menopause framework. So we took away any concerns about financial issues or how leaders are going to react to you in the business. And actually, if you're just having a shit day, say it. And I did not deliver that message. Okay, our CEO did. Okay, so Joe, who's our CEO, he owned all of this. And that's so important where you've got those male allies. Okay, it wasn't my message. Yeah, it was his message.
Yeah, thank you. Some great insights. And I'm just moving that across to you, Carolyn, at Journeywoman. Now, we know that you have one sole male employee.
You've
Tom.
met him already.
we've all heard Tom. But does any of your work practices echo what's just been explained there by Nicky? How do you?
Yeah, so
your
when
demographic
5 years
work?
ago when I took over Journey Woman, it was basically a website that put out one newsletter a month on travel tips. So the culture was, or the way that it worked was we would solicit tips from firsthand tips from travelers and produce it back mostly. Evelyn was 78. I was 50. I had to think about, okay, I have this readership base. Mostly, I would say the average Journey Woman reader is 65. How do I possibly authentically communicate from, as a 50-year-old woman to an audience that ranges from, 60 to 100, basically. We have women well in their 90s. So the first thing I did was I created an advisory council, a very diverse advisory council. We have 13 women on it now, representing Journey Woman readers, representing tour operators who are an important part of our community, women's safety experts. I looked around and I said, who can I bring in to help me understand the right way to do this? And even today we have 16 writers that are from around the world. All my writers are over 50. The oldest is 84. And I have one accessible travel writer who is not 50, but I've been doing accessible travel for over a year now. It's very important to me to have that. So I may not have it all on my team. My team is younger, but I have tried to build it within the entire community. And of course, we have hundreds of women-owned travel businesses in our directory, and women-led travel businesses who are also a part of all the things that we do. So I've tried to find other ways to do that in a non-traditional kind of structure.
Yeah, absolutely walking the walk. I did notice actually, Alice, when we had our call a couple of weeks ago, and one stat that I wrote down is that only 20% of mainstream TV travel presenters are female, which I found astounding. Obviously,
and all of that is Joanna Lumley. Literally, all of it.
Oh, not just Joanna. I mean, I know that, Simon Reeve, Ben Fogle, all very easy on the eye, aren't they? But, why is it that so few women, and what are you doing about it? Apart from leading a one-woman show.
I'm trying. It's really, really difficult, and it is so irritating. So Intrepid did a survey, and they asked 2,000 women about adventuring, and nobody could name a single woman adventurer. And for someone who spends her whole life banging her own drum and trying to do big adventures, it's incredibly frustrating. And for some reason, it's still very, very male-dominated. I think even with my books, I've been told by my publisher, women adventurers don't sell. Of 101 TV programs made by the two main channels in the UK, only 26 were fronted by women in this, I think. So it is a bit depressing. But I think all we can do is just keep relentlessly self-promoting and also just saying the message, because everybody does want to see themselves at some level represented, don't they? And if this demographic, as we really have found out, is the queen demographic coming forward, if we are the market, then we should be on telly as well, and we should be on the radio, and we should be banging our own drum. Because my point is, look, I love the men as well. I mean, it's really fun. It's like Levison Wood, very nice guy. I love watching him, but he does adventure differently. I know that I travel and I adventure really, really, really differently. Number one, I have fairy lights in my tent. Number two, I spend a lot of my time getting very nice men to do things for me. So, no, it's very different. I mean, honestly, I do believe women travel more collaboratively, we travel more communicatively, and we're very curious about other people in a way that, I'm sorry, I'm being really genderist. I do apologize, but as a general rule, we are very interested in other people, other women in other communities, how they raise their children, what their aims are, how they cook, what they're wearing, where they shop. We are genuinely interested. And what I love about this time in my travel life is, the communities I like to travel in and that I work in and that I live in, which are non-Western. I live in Morocco. Look, You can have as much Botox and as many facelifts as you like. They can sniff out a fertile woman at 1,000 meters.
Goodness me.
They know exactly what
At
age
our
you
age.
are. No, exactly. That's the point. They know that that's all done for you, that you're an auntie, basically. They're like, this one's an auntie. And occasionally you'll get young guys coming up and you go, I'm old enough to be your mother. And they go, but the Prophet Muhammad had older wives. I like old meat. But like,
I hope you take that as a compliment.
no, I mean, I was just like, whatever. No, but the point is you're at a different stage in your life and there's no point in pretending you're not. So if you go into travel in this era, understanding what stage you're at and that other people know what stage you're at and they recognize you at that stage, you'll be very happy because you'll be treated very, very well.
Well, that's just wonderful to hear. The Moroccan way. Well, I think we'll just pause on the workplace there. I think we've covered a lot of bases. And we've actually got a picture that we're going to put up. We're going to move the conversation to marketing. And has the picture come up? It has indeed. So one of the points that Aviva made this morning very clearly was that she felt that travel brands really have not nailed it at all when it comes to marketing to older women. So I thought I'd start by putting up this wonderful picture here of what we like to call the smug silvers. As you can see, they're bland, they're kind of beige. There's the sort of George Clooney look-alike who appears to have no pot on his belly at all, looking pretty fab in his swimming trunks. There's his wife sort of there, perhaps it's his wife, who knows who she is, with the sunglasses poised above her head. And look at those three ladies laughing in that lovely sort of highlighted silver way, and their life is so perfect. So, Meera, I'd like to start with you. You had a couple of problems with language. What does that picture do? When did you book that holiday? I haven't put the labels on of which company. Does it do it for you?
I mean, no. But my problem isn't that these images can be used. It's just if these are pretty much predominantly the images used, right? So that's what I find with a lot of the travel marketing is that but one of the things actually I forgot to say in the intro was it's not the age bands themselves are one thing, but I think especially following on from the opening keynote, like over 50s to describe everyone between like 50 and let's say 90 or even 100, you know, however long people are traveling for, is just so big. Like it's just too big a bracket to kind of exist in any like real terms, in meaningful terms. So yes, when I see images like this, they definitely don't speak to me. And like I said, they don't speak to certainly my peer group. But I think the key is it's mixing it up and acknowledging if you are going to use over 50s as your main term, which I don't know if that's going to be a thing in a few years' time. I think maybe 20 years ago when people didn't have the travel backdrop of their own life, like my parents did not travel the way I have traveled. Like I have been, you know, backpacking since the 90s, you know, since I was like 18, 19, since I went to uni. That's not, certainly not my parents and some of my friends' parents. Yes, I come from a different heritage where that wasn't so much the thing, although my dad did find out all these stories about him. But that's because he moved to England when he was very young. But broadly speaking, it isn't. So, yeah, I think, you know, we talk about diversity in language terms, but the photography, and this is true in travel media as well, is that we don't pay as much attention to diversity and you know, problematic, let's call it, you know, colonial images, whatever it is. We just don't pay as much attention. People are starting to, and I'd say the same goes for things like this, is that that's fine if that's who you're marketing to, but if you are trying to tap into certainly the just turned over 50s or the about to turn, this is not them. They're not at that stage broadly. And like I said, I won't say it anymore, but you know, I can only speak for the group of people that I am familiar with who travel a lot, who probably outside of all the essentials probably spend the most on travel above anything else. It's such a big deal in my world of friends, peers, everybody. And I'm not talking about the travel industry. And yeah. So.
Okay, right. Stale and pale. Right, Carolyn, I know you've got some issues with these photos. Do you want to... the first one is kind of screaming out, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if you could change them. We did, just to context this a little, we did a study 2 years ago, and we asked our readers if they felt represented, and 70% of them said no. So didn't feel valued, didn't feel represented in the way that, that, you know, when they looked at the travel industry. And that is why I now focus exclusively on over 50, and it's an enormous. It's not, you know, it's not just one big amalgamous group. But I think, you know, I really started to notice this just not only in the conversations I was having with the readers, but also, you know, as an editor, trying to find the right photographs to go on our website, and especially in solo travel, which, you know, we want pictures of older, adventurous, active women. Like, we're fighting against all these stereotypes. And even the words that are used in image libraries, old, elderly, whatever, like, I look at them and I just think, oh my goodness, like, all of the language around these images, if you were to look up the words around them, you would be shocked at how these images are described. So we've made a pretty conscious effort to use original photography, which I have quite a bit of. And then also, you know, you have to really look for more diverse women, because this is not, I don't think, representative of the women that are solo travelers or older adventurous women.
Absolutely, it's lazy. Let's move on to the next one, please. Now, we've tried a bit harder here, and we've come up with something a bit more interesting, hopefully authentic. So Nicky, you have a ski program, and you have a Lakes and Mountains program with Ingham's.
Summer, yep.
You know, what do these images say to you? These sort of happy hikers and the slightly older skiers. Do you think they're more authentic?
Oh, well, look, I mean, I think it's... I think the psychographic I was listening to this morning, which was brilliant, and of course the demographic's important, but there's this whole psychographic bit for me around, you know, will over 50s, to your point, Meera, mean much in a few years? Probably not, no. It's about this state of mind. It's about the mentality and approach that you have, whether you're one of our customers or whether you're an employee. So yeah, of course they resonate, but again, it's, you know, I'm always nervous around this because, you know, which part of me is it talking to? The woman, the gay, the lesbian, the age, who are you talking to? For me, it's authenticity across the whole of the customer experience, across all of your touch points. So through the whole booking process, it's like, what's the language? How inclusive is that total experience to who you are? So yes, it's great, but for me, if I was booking a holiday, and when we think about it from our brand's perspective, it's that authenticity across the whole piece, right. Whole customer touch point is what I would say. Okay.
So just moving on to the other two, which are more adventurous. Now, Alice, am I right? Is that you there?
Yeah, that's
I think it is.
Of course, they're great.
This is Alice, I think, doing the Marathon des Sables. Is that right?
I signed up for that for my 50th birthday present to myself.
And if anybody doesn't know what this is, it is the most unbelievable endurance test. It's something like, and I'm not going to get the detail right, but it's something like 7 marathons in 7 days across the desert, sleeping on the sand in your bits, sand in your, everywhere. And it just sounds like hell on earth. And people kind of, die on it. They got to crawl across the finish line. How was it, Alice? And is that...
Well, do you know, it was really hard. In fairness, it was really hard, really, really, really hard. And it terrified me because I had, 8 months to think about it. So every morning I woke up thinking, oh God, I'm signed up for the Marathon des Sables. And every night before I went to sleep, I was like, oh God, it's another day gone and it's coming up. But I remember one of the most memorable moments of my life was when I remember running up the hill at sand dune on the last day, and my feet were in complete tatters. They were they were just big holes of pus, and I was high as a kite on painkillers, and I saw a guy in front of me on top of this hill, like shouting and jumping up and down. And when I got to the top of the hill, I could see the finish line. And I was like, I've done it. I've done the Marathon des Sables. No one can ever put me down again. And it was one of the most joyous moments of my life. And I think what I would say about marketing and so on, I would go for a holiday or a trip that is what I want to do. Actually age is, if it was only pictures of 20-year-olds, or if it was only I don't know what else, I might think about it twice, but I would be attracted by something that showed that someone like me could do it, and it would be in that soft adventure field, which, as we know, is also a really growing one.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and I mean, you can, if anything, if TikTok has shown us anything, it's that you can do anything at any age with any kind of form of body or look or style.
Hopefully. Well, kudos to you doing it. I really am so impressed, and I'm sure you weren't on your exercise bicycle with the chocolate biscuits for that one.
No, I tried
No,
to
I
do
was
that
going to say, right. The one bottom left, for me, and interested in the panel's comments, I think that's a bit sort of too extreme, and I'm always a bit nervous of those kind of that imagery, because you know a lot of older age, you know, can be around health issues, mobility issues, and the like. You know, Alice, back to you, perhaps briefly on that. Would that inspire the kind of people mainly in your age group to really try things like rock climbing and you know, extreme adventure?
I don't know. Would it inspire me? I don't know, but it would certainly give me. I'd be quite pleased that this woman can do it, so I probably can.
Good.
Yeah. I think you want some level of security. That I think for a lot of people, well, for me, if I go solo on a group trip, which I used to do a lot and I still do quite a bit, is I want to know that I'm not going to hold other people up or ruin their experience by being the oldest, the slowest, the fattest, the ugliest, the whateverist. And I think that is common, especially for women. So I think I would want some security around that. So if I saw that lady, I'd be like, well, definitely younger than her. And so clearly, as if that was the only thing that mattered. And so clearly I'll be able to climb up that rock, even though I'm very bad at rock climbing.
Well, fantastic. And that leads beautifully onto the next part of what we want to talk about, which is confidence, which I think is so, so important. Both in the workplace and in travel, I think particularly for women, lack of confidence is a real issue, and it's at every level. Who was it who was saying earlier that it was one of the people when they were feeding back that on the job spec, if you put everything as a criteria, you know, a woman won't necessarily apply because she doesn't tick all the criteria, whereas a man, and I'm sorry to be a bit generalising here, but will say, oh, I'll wing it, you know, I can do all of that, and if I can't, I'll work it out later. And I think also as we age, you know, the menopause in particular, that's really quite debilitating, both physically and mentally. You know, whether we like it or not, our looks do change and they do wane. And we have days, you know, I look in the mirror some mornings and I see my mother staring back. And frankly, you know, I'm not best pleased. You know, it is happening. You know, and it can really, really impact your confidence. You know, even if you're a relatively confident person, there are days where you really don't feel like presenting yourself to the world. And I think for people who, particularly girls who have had jobs where they've had to stop their job to have children, or when they get a bit older, they become carers to their aging parents. Again, it's real confidence knockers. And even when you get to that me time, which Aviva spoke so eloquently about today, when she said you get to your 60s and it's about all that time for me, do you know what? Sometimes you don't have the confidence, you know, whether there's been a divorce or a death or an empty nest. You know, how do we address that in the travel industry? So, and it's not even just necessarily you haven't got enough money, it's just the confidence thing. So, Carolyn, what are your views on confidence in women and trying to empower them when, you know, you're a very confident lady, but I would imagine quite a few of your 100,000 ladies need, you know, some boost or encouragement there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there is, you know, and I'm in Canada, but there's kind of a culture of fear that's been created in the world, and I think that's a shame because it's caused us, some of us, to step back from the opportunity that we can have through travel, especially. And so I always encourage women, you know, first of all, we have this incredible community of women that give each other their firsthand advice. You know, it's not reading the news headlines. It's women that are out there in that place that are saying, I am here now, this is what I'm experiencing. And I think that's really important. And I always encourage women to, I call it ground truthing, go out and find out for yourself. You know, don't just read a headline, because a lot of the people that are writing headlines in mass media have never set foot outside wherever office they are. They're not the ones out in the world that are traveling. So, and we have a lot of safety information. So all of this, you know, I think it can be, I don't know, I don't have cable anymore. I don't watch the news. I think we can choose what sources we bring into our lives that will you know, improve our confidence and reduce our anxiety.
That's great. Meera, when we spoke previously, you told us about this wonderful phenomenon, I'd never even heard about it before, called coastal grandma, since which I've been researching. And coastal grandma seems to be the sort of wafty, lovely, floppy hat, big sunglasses, glass of Chardonnay, and I'm older, but just life is also perfect. Is that something that you think inspires people with confidence, or is it going to scare us all off?
I mean, I think it all kind of links back to kind of what we were talking about earlier and what Aviva talked about earlier about images and marketing departments and it not really reflecting. So coastal grandma is something I came across when I was researching the article that I wrote, although I didn't actually refer to it in there, I don't think. But it's kind of a bit, I don't know, like white company meets like farmer's market meets like wearing linen all the time. And and that's lovely. Like I like all of those things. But it's tapping into probably that image before. Although I have to say, if I had to choose between those women drinking wine and you, I'd be more likely to book the other holiday. That is like hardcore. I think, I think the average age of marketing departments is about mid-30s. And I know when I was like in my 20s and 30s, like 50 just like was old. Like it just felt old. And the problem is that like I'll be 50 in like a couple of years less. And, I feel like I'm in my 30s. And I'm not saying that everyone should. It's just, I've seen like a lot of my cousins, whatever, their kids are now like hitting 18, 20, graduating, all the rest of it. And every time like there's a Facebook update on that, we're like, oh God, how did that happen? Like I still feel like I'm 32. So
you should worry.
Yes, this coastal grandma phenomenon. I think it was maybe a year ago. It was a real thing, and it was like a lifestyle thing. And I remember reading an article that said, it's a tribe and it's a vibe. And if it is, that's great. But I think, like I said, the problem is, I'm actually going to quote when I was last year at the conference. I think it's Aziaz from Tour Radar was on a panel that I was moderating about inclusion, and I'm actually copying. I think it was Claudia's thing of writing things on my.
Oh, I wonder what you're doing
now.
there.
Great, it's really useful. And I think he said something like, I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, if you're not at the table, then you don't want to be on the menu. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about like all these images, coastal grandma stuff, whatever it is that, you can't know it unless you're part of it. So they've just marketing departments they all need to like have people of all ages on it. If you're going to market to those ages, you just can't know. Like I've forgotten what it's completely like to be a teenager now, or I wouldn't be the right person. I might be part of the conversation, but I wouldn't dream of setting up marketing campaign aimed at teens without talking to teens or having teens on my advisory panel, whatever it was. So yeah, I think coastal grandma falls into that for me.
Okay, and that neatly brings us on to the workplace, Nicky. How can you build confidence for your older employees in the workplace? Because, they may have dealing with a lot of personal issues, both their own and within their families. What are you doing there?
I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is kind of financial stability. And I think, in my own, I'm in my 50s, and I think the thing for me is that I'm not prepared to accept as much of the BS, but similarly, for me, it's around the purpose. It's you're going through different stages, and for me, very much what I do is important to me, the impact that I make, but also the brands that I work for and what we stand for is really important. But a lot of the choices that, I might think about making over the next few years, and I haven't gone on and looked at the app yet to see how long I'm going to live to, but what struck me this morning is I don't think I've got enough money to last for the next 50 years. And I think, it's very, very unspoken about, and I think it's really, really important that we spend more time on education right now from when you first go into actually it's school. And we've spoken with quite a few people recently through like our pension providers who are going into schools to educate, to teach women, to teach girls, to teach women that you do need to think about your financial stability. So there's a bit around what you've got responsibility to do as an employer, but also there's a piece around being prepared for the future and taking away some of those pressures financially. We talk about the gender pay gap. It's still crap. We're still at 16%, but actually when it comes to pensions, the gender pay gap jumps up to 35%. How crap is that? So, it's really important that, everyone that's sitting in this room, in your 20s, in your 30s, don't be scared of negotiating your salaries. Don't be so scared of asking for more money. And I say this consistently because, trust me, every time a man sits near me and says, I've got a new job, they'll ask for money. But every time a woman sits with me, even now, and says, I've been promoted, thank you. Come on, where are you going to ask for your salary increase? So I think this stuff's really, really important. There's really important messages you need to think about. And there are some great partnerships that, we've been working with Octopus, and we've given everybody a financial coach, and they will help you think about planning for your goals, whether it's buying your first house, whether it's because you do want to start having a family, or whether it is because you're close to retirement. Some of that is really, really important. Think about the salary reviews that you can do. So when we look at our annual salary reviews, we give the highest percentage increases to our lowest earners. Okay, you've got to get that pay gap addressed. Put more in, and then you can put more into your pension. As I said, do a lot through education. You know, and just make sure, I know it's a given, but just make sure you've automatically built in equal pay reviews. Every time you're doing an annual pay review, just make sure there's nothing in there that you just don't know about. So for me, there's a big message today just around financial stability, I think.
Fantastic. So important. And that pension, especially that pension, everybody. So we've got a few minutes now. I thought we'd open it to the floor. So there's any Q&A. Oh, straight up with a hand there. Do we have some roving mics or, yeah. So start there and then over to you afterwards. And then to go.
Hi, everybody. Iris Serbanescu from Women's Work Tourism Accelerator. Thank you so much for this panel. I'm in my scary 30s, but it sounds like it gets better, so can't wait. I just had a tactical question on the marketing front. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and we are limited in terms of marketing to the resources we have, which are often like free web, like unsplash.com to find imagery. Do you guys have any ideas for where we can find imagery that reflects the kind of audience that we want to cater to without spending money on sending a photographer on a tour?
Does anyone have any?
Well, we use a few, but Envato is one that we use, and it's $100 a year, so it's fairly affordable. And then we also get a lot of imagery. I don't know why we have a lot of photographers. My writers are great photographers, so that's where we get our imagery.
And Alice, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I would like to say something actually, because holidaymakers, they love to send you their photos, and some of them are going to be really good because people now use their cameras properly, don't they? So I think user-generated content in this case, you're going to get some really, really good stuff. And it's often a way to keep your clients engaged afterwards. You know, if you say from that trip, we're going to, I don't know, give a bottle of wine to whoever gives us the best photo, or whatever it is, doesn't have to be anything big, or even just 50 quid off your next trip. You will get some really good stuff. I mean, you will get a load of rubbish, but you will also get some really, really good stuff. So I would do that because it's free. And you just say, you know, we're going to use your pictures. I used to do trips with Saddle Skedaddle, who are like a biking company. And they did that all the time, and they got really nice pictures, and they were really diverse. Because, of course, everyone's selfieing themselves in the Lycra.
Oh, great advice. Thank you.
Iris, one other thought. We, for the last 10 years, have done an International Women's Day photo competition, and that's another way to get photographs in. We have beautiful photographs from women all over the world of women. So
Fantastic idea. Competitions, selfies, and what was the name of the site again? In the site that you used?
International Women. Oh, Envato.
Envato. Fantastic. There was a question over there next.
We're tag teaming.
Yeah. Oh, you're together.
Okay. First question. We have the same question. So first was, there's this trend now. If anyone here see the Anne Hathaway movie where she dates the pop star, and then there's another movie coming out with Nicole Kidman where there's older women dating younger men. It's having a moment. I'm going to pass to Terry.
Yeah, we wanted to get your thoughts on that. It's not all positive, but yeah, it's just very much of the moment. It's very much, I think, a trend that we're seeing in real life, which is reflected by the movies. And are you feeling the trend personally as ladies in your 40s and 50s?
Right, so who's dating a younger man?
I'm not.
No.
And how can we leverage that, this trend, and hopefully it's not a short-term trend?
I mean, I think some of this is just a backlash, right? We talked about D&I backlash, and I think, you know, we're just seeing that more and more through different representations. So I think it's about context for most of it, right? And just remembering what that context is, you know, and you're going to take the messages from that and the way that you're going to take those messages. So, I mean, for me, I think it will just have its time, and I think it will work its way through, but it's stuff like what we're doing here today in terms of what we take back to our customers, what we take back to our employees, that's really, really important. I mean, we all look and think we want to be Anne Hathaway, right? Let's not deny that. Yeah, but I think, you know, it is the context. It's just bearing in mind, you know, that we've got opportunities to make change. You know, we've all got to vote on Thursday. We've got an opportunity to make a change. Let's not forget that. Sorry about the political bit, but it's true.
Okay. Anyone else want to add a cougar quote there? Right. Okay. Gail.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, we got part two of our tag team questions.
Oh, so it was two-part question.
Yeah,
Do beg your pardon. Sorry.
The second one was related to the photography and marketing assets. And I was glad that Meera picked up the point about making sure that you also, if you're doing a campaign that's focused on teens, speak to teens. But I'd like to go one deeper. I think the pictures are not important. It's very easy to buy photos of LGBTQ people and black and brown people, but is that reflected in your company? Does your team look like that? It's diversity washing, the new greenwashing. I actually get really suspicious when I see lots of pictures with lots of diverse teams, because having worked on them, I know that's not reflective. And so it doesn't upset me to see, the silver ladies, because maybe that is what they're authentically speaking about, and I would prefer that and would feel more confident buying from that company, just knowing that it's a bit more true and they're not jumping on a bandwagon. So I just wanted to add that to the mix, because I think it's just too easy to purchase the right imagery and it not actually mean anything other than the trend that it is.
Absolutely, and another one to add to that is age washing, and you see that too. So does anyone want to add to that?
I think where possible, companies that can sort of self-audit themselves. So it's not just about the imagery you're using. This is something that everybody in this room knows, I guess, that it's about who's being employed. Do you have diversity of customers? You've got diversity of images. Is your language inclusive? So I totally agree. It's not enough to just switch up your images and look diverse. But I don't want to preach to converted, because obviously everybody who's here obviously is here for a reason, and it's already on your radar. It's the people that aren't here or wouldn't come here that would need to hear that. So I think it's a really good point that you can't just show it. You've got to be it inside as well. Otherwise it is pretty meaningless, and it will come out at some point anyway. Someone will whistleblow, somebody will talk, oh, it's not like that to work there. And I've heard that about, not companies here, but just generally when you're talking to friends and colleagues of what it's really like to work somewhere versus what's projected. And I think the only way you can do that is to look at what you're doing. I've worked on marketing guidelines for Intrepid, and there's a lot of auditing going on. I'm about to do an audit on adventure.com in terms of how many different writers do we use, and I think we do a pretty good job of global diversity in different ways, and we really pay attention to our photography, and then if we're called out on something, which we were recently, we'll fix it. So I think that's really key as well for everybody.
Excellent. We've got time for just one more question.
Okay, mine relates to the marketing to the over 50s, and I'm 10 years on from that, just to make that clear. I see a lot of bad examples of imagery and content targeting me, and in particular the retirement homes. I mean, I don't think there's one person in this room in their 50s that is, well, hopefully not, living in a retirement home. What I'd really like to ask the audience and the panel is, who's actually doing it really well? What industry, or even better, what travel company are really using great content and imagery?
Good. Let's take it from the end. Carolyn, anything over in the States actually you'd like to, or in North America?
We are about to start a global study looking at exactly this question, and working with companies like Intrepid and others to do a bit of self-auditing, but also we are doing auditing of all of the websites. And I think who's doing it well, or at least better, there are a lot of women-owned businesses. They're small businesses that are doing a really nice job with their websites. And one I will point to, which is Canadian, is Wild Women Expeditions, who I just love everything they're doing. They've just redone their website. The CEO is a friend of mine, and they are living that brand. If you need a great example, look at their website. I think you would agree. They're killing it. So the reality is that a lot of the smaller businesses don't have the resources to do what the big companies do. So the big companies, I think, need to lead, but I think they could also look at the smaller businesses like Wild Women and see and learn from them, because I learned so much from these small businesses that have been doing women's travel for 30 years.
And they really know their market. Alice, is there any examples that you know in your presenting world or companies you've come across?
I do. I mean, I work with Intrepid, but I'm going to say Intrepid, and I'll tell you the reason why. It's because I live in Morocco, and there's so many travel and tour companies, and sometimes when I go into larger ones that are based outside of that you know, they're not Moroccan indigenous companies. You go in and they're full of Europeans or Westerners. You go into Intrepid Travel, it's all Moroccans. Zina here is Moroccan woman, head of EMEA marketing. And to me, it's like you said, it's about actually being part of the place you're in and living your own example. So when you talk about diversity, I totally agree with what everyone's been saying. So I would say they're pretty good. And I know, I mean, I led a women's tour, and the women who came on it were, some of them were ages with me, some of them brought their daughters, and some were younger. And it was brilliant. And we put our pictures up. And you know, none of us are glamour models, but we all looked fabulous in our sweaty hiking kit. At least we thought we did, and that was the main thing. And so hopefully someone else will come on that tour. Because it is also about, you know, we prize beauty and we prize kind of perfection looking so highly in our culture, and it's absolute nonsense. Totally. I mean, it's rubbish. So I think, you know, getting a bit realer is definitely down there. So yeah, that's my shout out.
Thank you. And I'm getting all those retirement village ads too, I wouldn't worry, girl. We are almost out of time. Have I got a moment for one quick question, or do you want me to stop, Joe?
We're sort of rounding up.
Okay, so I asked each of the panel to think about if they were going to go back to their Q1, what piece of advice would they give themselves now a few years later that they've learned? Should we start again at the end and work back, Carolyn?
Yeah, I think actually I've done this my whole life, which is, and I think as I've gotten older, I'm less interested in what the rules are and more interested in doing what is right. So Journeywoman now has a speakers bureau for women. We have our women's travel directory. We have awards for women over 50. We're writing a book on women over 50. I'm doing this, you know, not necessarily because I can afford to do it, but because I think it is the right thing to do for women and the right thing to do for me and the right thing to do for the business. And the other part of that is related to business models and not really doing what everyone else does with their website, which is just putting ads on it to fund a business. I wanted to create a different business model for Journeywoman, which thank goodness we're able to do with the support of our partners. But I don't know all the time what the rules are, and I don't like being told that I have to follow rules. So I'm more in the camp of make your own rules and just do what feels right to you. Do not follow what everybody else is doing, because then you're just contributing to more of what we're talking about here today.
Great advice. Nicky?
All of that. That was really good. I mean, okay, so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, okay, so Taylor's in town, so I'd be in my car, I'd be putting on The Man, and I'd be listening to the lyrics. I'm so sick of running as fast as I can, wondering if I'd have got there quicker if I were a man. The answer is no. So what I would say to myself is own your own story, because for me it would just be about empowering my younger self. And sometimes I feel, you know, mixed around the fact that I've got to my 50s where I really feel most empowered. So it's to own my own story, and it's to grab more space. Okay?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love that.
Alice?
So mine's really simple. It's this too shall pass. So enjoy the stage you're in.
Yeah. Just what my mum would say.
Yeah.
And
I just have to clap whatever I say now. I feel really left out. Say something really mediocre now. I was thinking about this. I was thinking I'd probably say, if I think back to when I was 20-something, I was probably really worried about where I'd end up or how I'd get there. And I'd probably say, you know, don't worry about it. It's like chucking up a load of balls, and at some point things will settle and you'll work out what it is, and it doesn't matter if you wobble in between, because like everybody else is like, you know, faux adulting as well. Yeah, just that, you know, and I think without wanting to sound too woo-woo, you know, I think if you do kind of have a bit of introspective time in as you're like going for your career and work out who you are and what you want, you think you just get a little bit more confidence to be a bit more of a disruptor or like not follow the rules. And that's really important, because I think until you get that kind of inner confidence, you don't really feel like you can do that. So, yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Great. So some great advice there from everybody, and I think, you know, finishing on this too shall pass. Truly, life is short. You never know, you know, what's around the corner. Really make the most of it. Thank you to all of you.